South Africa's national parks seem to be winning the war against rhino poaching. Last year, 124 rhinos were killed in the Kruger National Park. And while tragically high, it is in fact a massive 40% decrease from 2021 in the park. However, it seems poachers have now changed their focus and they're targeting provincial and private parks, mostly in KwaZulu-Natal. A combined total of 244 rhino were killed in that province last year. 448 rhino were killed across all the country's parks last year. This represents a very slight decline from 2021. Forestry, Fisheries and Environment Minister Barbara Creecy joins us now. Minister, thank you very much for joining us. The national decline is only 3 rhinos less last year compared to the previous year, so it's minimal. Clearly the focus has shifted from the numbers. So we're winning the war in Kruger, which is fantastic, but not yet nationally. So what worked, what is working in Kruger National Park, and can we replicate that across the other parks?
Good evening, Sally, and greetings to your viewers. Yes, indeed, I think that there are lessons we can learn. Firstly, our anti-poaching activities have been combined with systematic dehorning. We are also looking at tighter management of rhino populations in smaller areas within the national park itself. And of course, there is the ongoing daily battle that our rangers are fighting, which includes air support, dogs, and so on. But I think that another significant shift has been our attempt to cooperate with the National Prosecuting Authority, with our own fusion center, which gathers intelligence, and also with a range of international agencies. And what this has helped us to do is not just to catch the operators who would be actually doing the killing on the ground, but it has also helped us to make significant arrests of traffickers, those involved in money laundering and bribing of rangers. But also we've had significant busts of rhino horn internationally. There were 2 important busts, one in Dubai and another in Singapore. And I think this is assisting us in terms of the overall battle.
All right, so you've mentioned a number of really important frontiers for winning that war. I want to go through them in a little more detail. First of all, you spoke about dehorning. Is that now strategy, that dehorn the rhinos, therefore they will not be of interest to the poachers? Is that working?
Yes, I think that since we began widespread dehorning of rhinos in Kruger, we haven't had an incursion from the western side of Kruger. There are still incursions from Mozambique, but obviously with the very lengthy boundary that we have in Kruger, it helps if we are cutting down on the incursions on that side.
I mean, it's tragic that we have to remove these magnificent horns, but if it spares their lives, it's worth it. Do you think that the private game reserves, are they following suit?
Yes, I have visited private reserves where they are also involved in extensive dehorning programs, and they have also reported positive results in this regard. Clearly, of course, the horn does grow back, so it's not a long-term solution, but I think it does help in a situation where you are trying to get on top of syndicates operating in the area.
Yeah. Okay, so that's something that I suppose is, relatively simple, that can be spread out across all the other parks. It really does seem to work from what you're saying. You've spoken extensively about the increased intelligence to actually smash these poaching rings, and that the NPA is on board, but also there is a fusion centre. And it seems that it's this everyone working together. It's this coordination of resources. What goes into that? I mean, are you, obviously there's an international element, as you've mentioned, there's law enforcement, there's also prosecution, but with other operations, we've also seen private security, for example. Is that the case here as well?
Well, in provincial reserves, yes, they would have their own private ranger forces. And last year, mid-year, I went to the APNR, the private reserves attached to Kruger. We had a meeting there with their ranger services, and we've also increased cooperation with private reserves across the country.
All right. Still, we've got nearly 450 rhino being killed, so it's still clearly a massive problem. What do you need to spread the success of Kruger out? I mean, is it a budget issue? Do you need a lot more money? Are you concerned that you might not be able to replicate that success?
Well, I think that there are budgetary considerations, Sally. It's not cheap to dehorn rhino, and I know this is an area where we've had considerable support from non-profit organizations and philanthropies, and that financial support is obviously very, very important. We've also done work on working with our own ranger corps to make them less susceptible to approaches from syndicates. And I think that other provincial authorities would also need to look into the terms and conditions and general working conditions of their ranger corps. Obviously, rangers and their families are very vulnerable to syndicates, and I think it's very important to work with them. And of course, improving overall park management and ensuring that you have sound park management is very important when you're dealing with a complex issue such as this.
Yeah, and we heard of that horrific murder of a top ranger just a few months ago. Absolutely tragic, clearly assassinated. I want to ask you if, in succeeding in dealing with rhino poaching in Kruger, is it having a positive spillover to other endangered species? I'm thinking of the pangolin, for example. A lot of these poaching rings don't just trade in one endangered animal. They also include perhaps pangolin scales. Am I right? And is it impacting on the fight to protect the pangolin?
Sally, I don't have figures with me, so I wouldn't want to respond to this with any certainty. What you would understand is that the kind of operation that goes into killing a rhino is a very sophisticated operation. It tends to be syndicate-driven. In the pangolin situation, you might find that you've got smaller operators catching live animals in traps, and of course we know the horrendous conditions under which these poor animals are trafficked. So I think that these crimes, while they are both wildlife crimes, may not be targeting the same syndicates and may not necessarily be complementary in their positive impacts.
Yeah, so there's a great deal of work to protect all species, I would imagine, massive challenges. At least we have a formula that works now, and hopefully we can see that rolled out across all our parks nationwide. Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening, Forestry, Fisheries and Environment Minister Barbara Creasy.